Hey there, listen, do not use the assessed value to determine your offer price. Okay? I'm Chris Thomas, and this is Land Flipping 101. I help real estate investors achieve a 100% ROI and earn $20,000 profit without funding their own deals by using my signature Land Flipping 101 blueprint. Today, I'm going to talk about how to value land. I'm going to first get into the land attributes itself and then how you figure out how to price it. Okay. But first, I had a question in the group from Chelsea Myers, and she was asking, how do you lead conversations with sellers? She doesn't want to sound like she doesn't know what she's doing. And I think that is such a great question, Chelsea, because, most sellers really just want to know that you're a regular person who's going to complete the transaction that you've described in your letter. And you just got to give them, lots of space to share their story and about the land. And then, how they came about owning it. Why did they buy it? What were they planning to do with it? And why didn't they do it? And then why do they want to sell now? Because really the first goal is just determining motivation so that you know if it's worth pursuing the opportunity. So I would say just giving them lots of room to talk and share their story. That seems to work for me. All right, so today's topic is how to value land. So, hey Sam, nice to see you again. Okay, first I'm going to talk about the land itself, and then I'm going to talk about, how to find a price for it. So, to value the land, think about like the bottom of the totem pole, like the lowest priced property is the property out there that doesn't have any road access, right? Because property that doesn't have any utilities or road access is going to be like the So the first thing I would say is there a road up to it? And then if you do have a road up to it, then there is immediately more value. It's because you wouldn't have to extend a road. But the next thing you'd want to do is look at what type of road it is. Is it a private or a public road? Is it a dirt road or is it paved? If it's a county road, then that's huge because the county maintains it, and that would automatically, increase its value. But if it's not county maintained, it should be at least clear, throughout the year, and you should be able to drive to the property and have no problems with it. If you're looking at a map and it's not labeled like with a street name, it's probably private, and so it's not going to be as valuable as having like a county maintained road up to it. So you could add value for the county maintained road, and hi everybody, thank you for joining me, Brittany and Billy and Linford. So if you can add a reasonable amount of value to it if you find that it has road access, and the nicer the road and the more county maintained, the better. People just want convenience of having a paved road, so your property is automatically more valuable. And then next, if a property has electricity, that makes it more valuable too, right? Because it's not cheap to get electricity to your property. And a lot of my buyers just go off grid. I mean, it's just a cheaper alternative. But if you do have a power line running to your property, that's a significant increase in value. So if you have power even only a couple of lots away or down the street, that dramatically increases the value compared to property that doesn't have electric in the vicinity. So you want to have a property with electric at the power line or a few lots down, and it'll directly increase the value. Okay, so next I would say is just other uses. Give a dramatic increase to the value, right? Because people need to be able to flush their toilets. I mean, you could always drill a well for water, but those range from 10 to 15,000 and sometimes more, just depending on how deep the water table is. If there's no city sewer, then a septic tank has to be installed. And if you have either of these installed already, it increases the value. But there are alternative sources for all of these, and many people now want to live off the grid, so you can find other ways, but it's better if you have city services, and that dramatically improves the property. And then other things that might impact value would be like if there's an HOA. And I typically stay away from HOAs with monthly dues, but if there's just a few $100s a year, it's not that bad if they're providing some great services like trash collection or snow plowing or just beautifying the entrance by planting flowers. You kind of got to weigh the pros and cons. Most of the properties that I have are not in that situation, but that's just something you want to consider. Homesteading, that kind of thing. But just so you know, zoning could tremendously impact the value of what you can do on the property, and you want to be aware of that, and how it'll impact what you can and cannot build there. But I would say even above all of those things, number one would be location. That's unbelievably important. I think I just took that as, assumed everyone knows that, but you do want to take that into consideration, because you want to consider how far is the property from services, from schools, from healthcare, shopping. Obviously the closer you are to these kinds of amenities, the more valuable the land is. Pricing the property, I will say it's more of an art than a science, and so there's several ways that you can price a property when you're sending out like a blind offer. Like the assessed value, it's different in every state. This is where the tax assessor assigns a value. Sometimes it's a percentage of market value. I would recommend you call the county to understand how they assess the value, because in my experience in the areas where I've worked, I do not consider assessed value as the value I want to come up with my price for. But it is something to consider, because you do want to understand how the county assesses the value, and usually it's a percentage of the market value. The more often way that I will do it is I'll compare sold properties. I'll look at recently sold land similar in size and attributes, like I mentioned just a minute ago, and then in the same city. So if it's not in the same city, if there's not any comparables, you might open up the map a little bit to look at anything nearby, but I'll really be comparing. It's not that different than with houses. When an appraiser does a comparable on a house, they're looking at, okay, are they both 3 bedrooms? Do they both have 2 baths? Is there a driveway? Are there upgrades? They're adding value for things that are better, and they're reducing value for things that are lesser or worse, if you will. So it's very similar with land. You just do it the same way. Another way you can price your property is by looking at listed comparables. So if it's a non-disclosure state or there are no sold properties, you can look at properties that are listed for sale right now, and just realize that those are pie in the sky prices. Usually those are not the prices they'll actually sell for, which means they're not exactly the market value, but I'll usually estimate 75% to 80% of that value as the market value. That's just a rule of thumb thing that I do, and then I take my offer price from that number. And then you can also look at it by size. You can back into the value by looking at the surrounding area and understanding what are houses selling for. And then you can, this is a rule of thumb I use. You can figure out what does it cost to build a home on the property, and then you can try to figure out like the cost per square footage, and then how much for a realtor, and how much for the land, and how much does the builder want to make. The builder usually wants to make at least 25% on the property. So you can back into it that way, or you can do what I do, which is sort of the maybe the ghetto way of doing it, the redneck way, if you will. I just take a percentage of the final sale price of the house. So if I'm looking at a property that just recently sold, a house with a house on it, I'll take a 15 to 20% of that final sales price to come up with what I think the land value is. I think it's usually about 20% of what the sold price of the house is. Does that make sense? Make a note in the chat if that makes sense or if you need more clarification.